Hello campers, welcome back to the Casual Car Camper. Today we're going to be reclaiming the ground cover from an old tent. Right here I have an old camel tent that is 43 years old. And when I started to set up to see if it was still any good, the seams just started ripping apart. And I think even the fabric hasn't started to completely deteriorate, but trying to re-sew all the seams on this, the fabric would deteriorate. So what we're going to do today, it has a lot of heavy-duty polymer materials. In some cases, I'm going to be able to just pull and the seams are going to come apart. In other areas, I am going to have to take a knife. You could also do this with a seam ripper. I just didn't have one handy. If you're not, don't do a lot of sewing, I will post a link to a seam ripper on Amazon so you can see what I'm talking about. If you are doing this with a knife, just be extremely careful because it is a sharp object and there's no safety. The advantage of if I was to do this with a seam ripper is I won't have to worry about injuring myself as much. I mean, I have poked myself and drawn blood with a seam ripper, but it's a very small, shallow poke where if you're keeping your knives sharp, it could require stitches. So always, be careful. You could also wear gloves while doing this. I actually am going to grab a pair. All right, campers, I'm back with a pair of gloves. Now, even though I am wearing gloves, I'm still going to be careful and practice safe knife technique because a properly sharpened knife with enough pressure will cut through leather. Okay, so initially what I was doing, I was using the knife to get underneath the seams and lift up, but this was taking a very, very long time, going very slowly. I only got about 6 inches done. But once you get it started, you can just pull along and it comes apart. So basically you just want to weaken the seams because for those of you who do a lot of sewing know that basically it's just one long thread. So if you cut the thread anywhere, it's one long rope. So if you cut the rope, it weakens each side of it. So if you just weaken enough of it, you can just pull like this. Which is also why if your tent starts pulling apart on one seam, it's done. You'd have to replace all the seams or at least all that section, and it starts getting very difficult very quickly. But the flaps on this are basically made out of the same material as a tarpaulin, so I'm going to use these as small tarps. And then the floor is also the same plastic tarpaulin material, so I'm going to use that as a ground cover or backup ground cover for one of my tents because it's already got the hooks on it, which I will show you. It's got these hooks right here, which I'm going to be able to pull off the material without pulling these off. Now this tent is, as I said, 40 years old, but it spent 15 to 20 years in a non-climate controlled attic in my garage. I think that's why a lot of the seams started to deteriorate because fabric doesn't like heat or any extreme temperatures. and garages have a tendency to get much hotter than the area they're kept in. And instead of, let's get you nice and close so you can see what I'm doing. Okay, so here we have our seam. It's a double seam, which does, until it starts failing, makes it much stronger. So what we're going to do is we're going to get our knife blade underneath and rip up. Knife blade underneath and rip up. So we start getting it weak enough. If we get enough space, what we can do, and I hope this shows up well because I can only do this once. Only have one old tent that needs to be can put your knife in between, but unfortunately, because this is still very, very tight stitching, it's not, my knife isn't cutting, and it looks as if there's actually a third stitch. There we go. So it looks like a third stitch. So they really made this thing to last. It's just extreme temperatures are hard on canvas material and on material, on most thread, which is usually cotton. Speed this up. All I'm going to do is I realize I don't care about this fabric. I only want the plastic tarp material that I just cut. And now because it is worn out, I can just rip it going up down. Now we're going to flip it over. Look at the back side. See what's holding it on still. Looks like basically it's sewn to the material again. So very careful, I'm going to put the back of the blade against my finger. Let's just start a cut. And now we have it sewn to a third material, which is the mosquito netting. So we're just going to cut that. And again, the mosquito netting is just going to rip real easy. And we're going to go to this end, cut, and just work our way around. Let's see if we missed any pieces. And we have another small tarp. Probably we'll be using this to put over camp stoves or whatever once they're cooled. Never put a tarp over camp stove when it's hot because it will melt. So yeah, if you do get an old tent and it's the material has failed, you can still oftentimes salvage large parts of it, like this one. Well, all the stitching, a lot of the stitching has failed. It has some heavy canvas on the top. There's some heavy canvas on the top that seems to be still in decent shape that I can repurpose for something else. And then it's got a lot of this polymer material that's very similar, if not the same, as your average hardware store tarpaulin. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, since it's now just applying the same principles over and over again, I'm going to put you on time lapse, and you can watch me salvage everything useful off of this old tent. Not quite time lapse yet, apparently, because I mentioned I wanted to save the heavy duty canvas. So basically the only thing going in the trash is the ripstop nylon, because it's just failed in so many places. Now I have some areas that are, I have either two pieces of I have two pieces of the heavy duty canvas together, and I have some of the tarpaulin material. I think this was a multi-room tent, so these are the room dividers. So I'm not quite sure how I'm going to separate those. So I recommend, if you end up doing something like that, just start with getting the ripstop nylon away from the materials you want to save, and then move from there. I will, at the end of the video, tell you what I figured out for separating the materials I want to keep from the other materials I want to keep. All right, see you on the flip side. All right, welcome back, campers. Almost done. Just have the last couple feet. So what I have here is I have an area where multiple pieces were sewn together. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to get a starter cut again. And just go right down the line, go to the next reinforcing seam, and cut. And that's it. I have created a good sized ground cover out of the old tent. The nice thing about it is I was careful and is able to keep the loops on, so when I lay this under something I can still stake it down. It's a little easier than using a hardware store polyvinyl tarp. Hooks are going to be better than I would get in a standard hardware tarp, because where these have the hook and loops, most hardware tarps are going to have grommets to put your stakes through, and if you're putting something over this, you don't want to have stakes sticking up. So this is really good for a ground cover. I just got to figure out which tent I own it will work with. And as far as the canvas, it actually was in 3 pieces and had some doors attached to it. For the time being, I'm going to leave them together because I might be able to use this in a shed or something like that, or during the wintertime I use my outdoor pergolas and gazebos to store stuff in, and I think I can use this to make an entryway to keep rain and snow out, but give myself access when I need it. So that's going to go off to the side, and that's it. That's it just takes a little time, patience, either a sharp knife or a good seam ripper, and you can take an old tent that is falling apart and salvage what will be helpful when you go camping. Now, when I was pulling it apart, I did have some of the hooks come off. I'm just going to get some heavy duty thread, probably an awl, and put these back in if I need them. But I'm just going to hold them off to the side in case I don't need them. It's because these came off the roof, the canvas material. Okay, campers, I hope this was informational. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, leave a comment down below or contact me through the Casual Car Camper on Facebook. Link will be down in the description. I will do a response video answering all the questions. And remember, as always, as long as you're having fun, you're doing camping right.